Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session of Rising Stars by Pop Beauty and Wellness Brands. For those who don't know, my name is Jamira Burley. I'm a human rights activist and social impact consultant. I have the honor of interviewing these two amazing rising stars on all that they're doing, but also the intersectionality of where their brands sit, both in this moment, but also in the context of this industry. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our two panelists, Dr. Mia Reddy, founder of Dehiya Beauty, and Tess Melody Taylor, the founder of Taylor and Tess. Remember that after this session to please check out their booths to see many of their products either before or after this session. With that being said, I'm going to jump right into the questions that we have. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to enter them in the chat. And if we have time at the end, we'll try to get to them. So the first question that I have for you ladies is that considering that both of you came into this industry from very non-traditional paths and experiences, what are the experiences and life lessons that has helped to lead you to this moment to create your specific brand? And what gaps in the market do you hope to fill? And we'll start with you, Dr. Mia.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Mia Shea Reddy, and I'm the founder of Dehiya. Dehiya was founded after I spent some time in Morocco. I was living in Italy for several years, and I got to spend some time in Morocco, and I met a fourth generation herbalist who just kind of rocked my world and introduced me to Moroccan beauty traditions and rituals. But when I decided to start the brand, it was the storytelling and it was the rich cultural tradition in Morocco that really kind of got me excited. But my formal training is, I have a PhD in American Studies, and my focus was Black women and coming of age, representation, and identity formation. And so that kind of came from a really long history of mine, not long history, but just my background from very, very early on. I'm adopted. I have a brother and a sister who also adopted. I'm Black and Korean. My brother is Black and white. My sister is Korean. And my adopted parents are white. And so I grew up in Wisconsin, which is very, very segregated. And it's also very homogenous. And so really, really early on, I saw what exclusion looked like. I saw what it felt like to be othered, and it just completely informed my education. And so in starting the brand, it was just super important to me to, those tenets were just at the core of everything. It was about the story. It was about authenticity. It was about celebrating global beauty. So that's kind of where I come from.
Awesome. Tess?
Yes, thanks, Mia. So I've always been a cannabis enthusiast, I guess you'd say, but I really started to think more, critically and more holistically about the plant when it was legalized in 2018, and also simultaneously I'm watching my parents age, who are both military veterans. My dad is a Vietnam vet in his 70s, and over the past decade he's had countless surgeries all over his body, just restructuring everything. And so with that came like opioids being prescribed to him, watching just like our interpersonal relationships with him change with that. And then seeing that there's this other plant option that is so healing in so many ways. Like I call it the Girl Scout molecule, right? That always does what's right in every situation. Like the purpose is to return your body to homeostasis. And so I wanted to really, I also started to read obviously about how this is an industry that has great opportunity and wealth because it's brand new. Like we're all getting in on the ground floor. And so I really want find a way to get in, didn't know what that was going to look like. And I saw a unique intersection with beauty. I had interned with a esthetician in Dallas who had helped develop brands like SkinCeuticals. And so I learned a lot from her, but I also saw that I wouldn't be able to have this conversation in a more mainstream way and on, more mainstream platforms if when I saw the intersection between beauty and cannabis. So that's what led me to developing Taylor and Tess a CBD beauty line that in the state of Texas, I can go to a local boutique and I can teach them about CBD as we discuss them carrying my line. And then that is just a ripple effect. And I think my main goal is to normalize it, destigmatize it, and also empower people to make, better decisions, as they learn about the plant. So with that, I also, as far as gaps, beauty is traditionally very heteronormative. It's like pink or blue, like the marketing, all the messaging is very gender normative. And it doesn't really have we haven't really seen until, recently spaces open up and inclusivity and representation in a real way. And, with that, I do see a lot of interconnectedness when we look at intersectionality within ourselves and the people around us. And for example, like legalized hemp and cannabis would not be possible without the LGBTQIA plus communities. So I think it's important that that is all like present in your messaging and that it's inclusive, and that when I go to your Instagram or when I go to your online shop, I see people that I can relate to. And so that's just our goal in like filling that gap. And that's pretty much sum it up.
Awesome. No, I really appreciate that. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was super excited to moderate this panel, is because the two of you really wanted to focus on like the intersectionality, right? These issues, this moment is not new. And like, how can we tap into it in a way that is beneficial, not only to your unique brand, but also to the larger community, especially those who for so long have been marginalized. Especially when you think about like hemp and cannabis. In the US context, there has been many misconceptions on its usage, on users who use it, on its healing properties, and the criminalization of folks who have previously used it. And we know that in the last few years, it has been legalized in many states around the country. I would love to hear from the two of you to talk about what you're hoping the public will gain from a better understanding of the benefits, as well as the responsibility as we continue to explore cannabis in mainstream America.
You want to go first, Tess?
Sure. I would say my hope is that we realize that it's, in my opinion, unethical and irresponsible to not take the time and do the due diligence to look at how this industry is a reflection of some of the disparities in society, and actively working together on how to fix that. So I think if you're just getting in here, you're just getting into this industry and you're just pushing a product, you're not keeping that, at the forefront of your branding, your messaging. It doesn't have to be so much in an overt way, but I think if you're completely ignoring this topic, you're doing an injustice to the industry and to the people who are still suffering because of the war on drugs. And so I think that, your commitment should go beyond just, making messaging that feels inclusive, but I think it should, extend to what does your leadership look like? How are you educating consumers about these issues and touching on these important topics? Because you have a lot of power when you build these platforms. So Mia, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely the platform, when I decided, so CBD infused. And so Tess was saying, for example, when she goes into to a boutique or to a potential retailer, she's able to kind of bridge this gap between beauty, really trying to normalize it as, I look at it like I'm plant-based, everything is whole, cannabis is one of those plants, and to talk about it in the same kind of way that I talk about frankincense and the powers that it holds and the way that it works with the other ingredients, and just to kind of normalize that, because at the end of the day, things that we can gain and benefit from it, but there's just such this stigma that hopefully we can help to kind of diminish and eventually eliminate just over the years, as far as just the wording, the verbiage, the rhetoric around it, weed head and I'm just all of these words that kind of signify that you're the stoner, you're lazy, or you just want to get high, but there's just so many powerful medicinal benefits to the plant, and to be able to meet people where they're at and that they're able to relate to what you're saying, and that it's not just you trying to push like drugs on them. So,
no, that's such a great point. Because I think to Tess's point, it's like both honoring the fact of the harm that's been done while also recognizing how do we normalize it in a way where people can feel comfortable about having these larger conversations that isn't about like stigmatizing folks to be seen as like a drug addict or something like that.
right. Mm-hmm.
And for me, like, I love to teach the fundamentals as well and teach people about their endocannabinoid system that literally all of us and all of our dogs have, you know? And I think when you present it that way, you start talking about the science and like to Mia's point about it being a plant medicine. Like, I love to talk about the benefits in a very, thinking about it in like a one cell kind of way, but it's like one powerful cell that can do all these things, right? And so I think that's kind of my favorite part about this, is to teach about the plant. Like, oh, like you have eczema, this will help. Oh, you have a bug bite, like this will help. Like CBD is just, you know, with its anti-inflammatory properties, it just has so many healing benefits. And I think that is what people want to be well. And so I think that is what, you know, helps them kind of get over that. And I think when you, like you said, you meet them where they're at, it really is beneficial for them, you know, long term. However they choose to, you know, use the plants.
Awesome. Well, I think it would be remiss if we didn't talk about roadblocks, right? Especially for you two women of color, right? When we think about the either cannabis or the retail industries, we know that it's become increasingly harder for Black-owned businesses to adequately enter the market for a host of reasons, including lack of capital, access, or perceived marketability. What have been some of the roadblocks or barriers that you've encountered that have prevented you from taking your brand to that next level? And if we can start with you, Mia.
Yeah, absolutely. So roadblocks, let's see, where do we start? I mean, funding is always, you know, an issue, I think, for any self-funded, independent, you know, business. To that, I think being specifically in the space that we're in, you know, you're talking about clean beauty, you're talking about natural beauty, and then you layer that with talking about, you know, now I'm when people see my face, about what my brand is about, not made when you see a white brand founder, right? And so, and then they see like ancient cultural traditions, and it's just a lot to try and, so it's important that when I'm partnering that they understand, that they take the time to research and understand kind of where I'm coming from, because there are so many levels and there's so much education that needs to happen with it. And so that's something I'm kind of working through, but then to get larger retailers to understand that, to take the time to prioritize it is huge. Like prior to June, I wasn't seeing that. It was just so far and few between that you would get a brand that was trying to do more than just put you on a shelf and say that they, you know, have some brands, you know, that are created by founders of color, to go beyond that and to really like invest in the brand and try to understand the brand story and elevate it. So I think that that's really been probably the biggest roadblock for me. And then, you know, in the CBD space, absolutely. I mean, it's like you have retailers who are really interested, and then they haven't done the research on CBD. They know that it's like this hot new thing, right? And so they put you on the shelf. And I've had this experience with a large retailer. I was on the shelf. I got no support. You know, we didn't have testers. We didn't have trainings. I had to advocate for that. So it's not so much getting into the retailer a lot of the times, I think it's staying there. I think it's being understood and being marketed in the proper way. And so that is where I find the biggest struggle. And now I'm starting to see a little bit more because they're invested in it. I mean, it's, you know, people are voting with their dollars and they're seeing that this is what people want. And so whatever the reason is for them to take more time to invest in it, I'm here for it. And I'm happy to teach, happy to educate.
Yeah, and before you jump in, Tess, it also always boggles my mind when I see Black brands also only put into like sections for Black people, right? As if it's not an open market for other cultures to be able to participate in that brand as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would say for me, I think it's important that you don't expect, BIPOC or LGBTQIA plus or these CBD brands to necessarily fit into the conservative, rigid boxes and spaces that we're going to be different. That's the beauty of it. The culture is going to be different. The people that you see are going to be different than what you're used to seeing. And so I think it's accepting those brands as they are and not expecting them to transform themselves in their packaging and the different aesthetics to their brand to fit better in the mainstream. So as Mia is saying, upholding that and upholding all of those really beautiful layers to your branding and why that's important to who you are as a founder as well. And I think also the same is to your point, one of our products is the African Black soap and charcoal cleansing bar, which would get placed in an ethnic section in the ethnic section. When that's, African Black soap, the charcoal and the cocoa potash is healing to anyone with eczema, psoriasis, acne on their back. And so, but then that product is isolated and not utilized for what its intended purpose is, which is to heal skin. So that's what we're trying to communicate. And I really love that you brought that up, Mia.
I was just going to say, you know what that reminds me of? Do you guys remember that video? It was a few years back, woman who had tried shea butter, and she was talking about how amazing it was. The video went viral. And just the idea that people think that shea butter is only for Black skin blows my mind. But it's this, right? And so the same with the black soap. I have a Moroccan black soap, which is different, but it's the same sort of idea that it's ethnic and it belongs in an ethnic section, instead of taking the time to understand the education. I mean, at the end of the day, and I don't want to get too deep with it, but at the end of the day, as though so many of the traditions when it comes to plant-based and it comes to holistic medicine that you see around the world, it comes from the African diaspora, right? It was brought from the continent, and all of these, and we were the medicine people, we were the witch doctors, right? But medical doctors were coming to us asking us for help when they couldn't solve a problem. And so there's this long, rich tradition that is part of, American culture that people don't really, they don't understand that a lot of what they're doing comes from a tradition, that it's already in place. Just a matter of embracing it and kind of educating yourself on it.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about all the time, right? The need to really understand history, culture, and the people who started it, because then we can start to eliminate the barriers and oftentimes the misconceptions behind many of these products and practices that can actually benefit all of us. It's so funny because I have my roommate in college was a white girl, and I started sharing my shea butter with her, and she was just like, "Oh, I never thought to use it." And I was like, "Girl, I'm just trying to make sure you don't be ashy out here, right?" So yeah, we want to keep you moisturized, yeah, it's just, no shade, but so it makes me think about the 15% pledge, right? Aurora James, who's phenomenal. I'm still on waiting for a back order for one of her shoes. She started the 15% pledge that now has retail brands like Sephora, Rent the Runway, and West Elm in place, looking at how they can support people of color brands. And I'm just curious for you all, what do you think about this 15% pledge? Do you think that it's beneficial and can help to actually alleviate many of the barriers that are in place for either Black founders or Black creators who want to enter the industry?
Yeah.
I do. I think that I approach it with a little bit of, what is the word, reservation.
Mm-hmm.
When everything was happening this summer, there were retailers that I have been pitching for the last couple of years and getting no response, then now doubling back. And so it's less about the fact that they're coming back now. And it's more about acknowledging kind of where we're at and why you're here, and just eliminating the elephant in the room. So it was all about kind of the approach. And so the retailers that I've decided to move forward with for the fall and the spring, they stepped the right way. They had a plan, they had a strategy. They didn't talk before they put a plan into action. And when they approached me, it was like tiered. It was like, this is what we're going to do to roll you out. This is how we're going to support you. Mm-hmm. And they answered all the questions honestly and candidly about things that were happening internally, the optics of their social media, all of that. And so, you know, these were kind of like these ongoing conversations. And so I feel really good about that. I don't think that that's everybody's intention. And I think that you've got some retailers who are like, well, this will pass and I will just kind of stay quiet until it passes over. And then you have other retailers who just did it completely wrong. But even in doing it wrong, it's about acknowledging that you don't know what the hell you're doing. And that's okay. That is okay. And so, yeah, so I do see benefits in that. I love seeing the programs like the mentorship programs. I'm in one right now with Beauty United. And I mean, it's invaluable to have access to these brand founders and individuals who've been doing this and are seasoned and that can help us get to the next level. So, I mean, in all of this, it's been about that support, right? Like Casey Jorgensen is like such a good example of a brand founder who is using her platform in a way to, for lack of a better word, amplify Black voices and people of color voices and LGBT voices, right? So I think it's a matter of, in any situation, you're going to have those who are like have an agenda, and then you have those who are coming from a genuine place, and being able to kind of differentiate and not just jumping on the first thing like, oh, you know, this retailer is interested in me, but really like holding them to task, and not just in creating the partnership, but in maintaining it, right? Yeah. And growing it.
Yeah. And I think like, you know, what you're saying too is like long-standing change, like not like, you know, 15 minutes, like you're actually looking to make a partnership. And I think it goes back to also being like just an indie brand. And then you throw all the other layers on top of being Black woman-owned indie brand, right? So understanding the support that we'll need and understanding how you can learn from our experiences and then like, you know, improve. But I do think that the 15% pledge has kind of set the tone and has been something that's easy to imitate. So it's causing that domino effect within, you know, various industries. So I think it's certainly a good place to start. But like you said, like, what are you going to do to maintain those? Because obviously, you know, especially with bigger retailers and platforms, this could catapult a independent Black-owned brand and set and like help them get to that next level. So I think once you do, like making sure that you maintain that and that this doesn't remain just like a moment in time.
Yeah, we don't want it to be trendy or sexy moment, right? We want this to be institutional change or culture change, which makes me think about like when I first started doing activism, like equity and inclusion was seen as like the cute thing to do. But now when we look at the business case behind it, it actually is the most profitable thing to do. And so, you know, I have the pleasure of being an equity advisor for Sephora because they want to look at and ensuring what are the practices for retail industries to start putting into place to ensure that regardless of who you are, when you walk in the door of a store, you're treated well. And I'm curious for you all is like, why should retailers start taking consumers more seriously when they're making these demands, because they're more conscious around how brands should be treating consumers, but also treating potential business partners who are creating these new avenues for a wider range of folks to be included within the retail industry?
Yeah, like I think, like you said, consumers are just more culturally aware than ever. And now with digital media, you're constantly in contact with them and they're constantly watching what you're doing and how you're responding to what's happening in the world around us as well. And like you said, the data proves it. Like you know, if you look at research studies that have been done, you know, if you are a company that's actually prioritizing within your own organization, be that with your B2B partners or within your leadership, and obviously you should be prioritizing both, you're going to see more, you know, 35% more likely financial returns. So like you said, like you can't ignore, like one, you can't ignore the fact that everyone is being called to action in this regard. And two, it's profitable. And, you know, all of our different intersections within the economy matter. We all have spending power. And I think the individual consumer is also acknowledging their individual spending power.
People are voting with their dollars. And like, I think, I mean, we're layers, right? Like there's mean, everything with COVID and small businesses closing and kind of seeing the importance of supporting small and local. And then, you know, everything with Black Lives Matter having a resurgence, and then supporting brands of color and being more inclusive. And I think all of that plays a role in it. And then this morning during the opening conversation, Genevieve Ross said something along the lines of like, if your purpose isn't driving your business, like if you're not profiting, then you're doing it wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So people want to see more socially conscious, more, you know, they want to see a mission, they want to see your ethos, and they want to see that you're following through on that. Like you said, Tess, that it's not just lip service, but like they're following you, they're watching you, they want to see, you know, they want to see those receipts. And I think that changes the whole game.
Great point. Okay, so we have time for one more question, and I'm going to ask you both to be very concise so we can get both of your answers in. Considering our audience, what piece of advice would you offer to the industry, retail leaders on how they can authentically show up for brands like yours, and who can also help to set an example for industry leaders to be authentic when they're engaging your type of brands through an equitable lens, and also recognizing, right, that they may not see a profitability of partnering, doing that work in the short term, but in the long term, it's actually going to be beneficial not only for their brand, but also largely for the community. So what piece of advice would you offer them?
I mean, my biggest thing is just be authentic. Like, if this is something you're interested in and you're committed to, we're here for it. I mean, I'm here for it. I feel like if you come to me the right way and it's authentic and this is, you know, we're learning, we're trying to figure it out, and they're listening. So be authentic and listen. Those are my two big things.
Yeah. And I would say, you know, corporate responsibility has and continues to be important in business. And, you know, this can be a very monumental moment in combating, you know, systemic racism. And that includes, you know, helping this in an economical way as well. And so, you know, and online, I would say my, you know, final fact would be, if you're considering it, is that a poll was done that said that consumers are 55% more likely to shop with you if they feel like you're making a positive social or environmental impact. So consider that and look at the ethos of the brands that you're considering. And, you know, I think uplifting Black women at this time is paramount as well. So that's what I would offer is, you know, make the investment.
Hashtag listen to Black women, basically, is the whole purpose of this panel. Just listen to Black women. No, I think you all had so many great points. And so just to wrap it up, one, listen to consumers. I think that should be an easy thing to do. Also recognize the history and the culture behind it, ensuring that we're actually giving folks the full picture of these brands and what they're offering, the healing properties, the misconceptions. And then in addition to that, make the investment short and long term, and don't just make this a trendy or a sexy moment to seem as if you're supporting the Black community. Ensure that this is actually a business model. That way you can invest long term within these organizations. I'm super excited to be a part of this. I had some amazing conversations with you all. I look forward to continue to stay connected. For those who are joining in, again, please continue to participate, check out their booths, buy their products, hashtag listen to Black women. They're both on social media, so you can stay connected. What is your Instagram?
Mine is Dehiya Beauty, at Dehiya Beauty, yeah.
Awesome.
And then another thing, go ahead, and we're both on Nordstrom right now. Head over there and purchase some things, support, so we can stay.
Yeah, exactly. Go purchase it. And if you don't want it, you can purchase it and mail it to me. I'm in Harlem. With that being said, I hope everyone enjoyed the rest of their day. And thanks again for joining this discussion, and go purchase today.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.